Okay, well, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and start with our panel discussion. Thank you for being here. If you're still outside, I invite you to make your way back. And first, I want to thank our two panelists here for their excellent talks today. For Carl and Jens, thank you. And thank you for taking this time to answer our questions. As we did yesterday, we'll begin with a couple of topics that we'll discuss a bit amongst ourselves, sort of a panel conversation, and then we'll move to some of the questions which you've sent to us. So this is a question in the first instance for you, Carl, but Jens, if you had something to add to it, I would love to hear that. I was very interested that you highlighted hospitality in the response that you encouraged us to take to some of these changes. And I couldn't help but immediately think of Rosaria Butterfield's book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key, which I think you wrote a blurb for.
Yes.
And of course, she writes as a former lesbian who became a Christian as a result of being befriended and of eating in the home of a pastor and his family. I think you were speaking mostly in the context of Christian formation. But I wonder if maybe you could address the role of hospitality in evangelism and in terms of building bridges towards this strange new world, people living in it. I remember seeing a couple years ago in Australia a survey that said that the average Australian only ate in the home of one person in a year that they weren't immediately sort of it wasn't part of their immediate family.
Yeah.
And practically, it seems for many of us as Christians, we know that that's important, but we find it challenging. If anything, it seems that we practice less hospitality than we used to. I know when I grew up, every Sunday, we always had a big meal as a family with guests. That's pretty rare anywhere I've lived anymore. Most of us feel overwhelmed. We feel too busy. Inviting people to our home is a big deal. So I guess those kind of two sides of the question. One, hospitality in terms of evangelism and building bridges, and then actually how do we go about doing it practically when we feel so time poor?
Yeah, it's good questions. I think as the first, one of the things that I think is very striking today is that the ability to engage with people that we don't have some kind of a relationship with is very, very hard, particularly with people with whom we happen to disagree. Again, I think that social media plays into this. If you only ever engage with somebody online, you tend to reduce that person to the set of ideas or opinions that they've expressed. I do think real-time engagement is important. The chances of me persuading an LGBTQ person that I'm not motivated by hate, I suspect, is pretty much zero if all I do is try to engage with them online. But I do think we can have positive engagements with people if we engage them in real life in hospitable type situations. I give an example from my own experience as pastor. One of the things that we did when I was pastoring in Philadelphia was once a year. It sounds, it sounds kind of oddly English, even though it took place in America, but what I would do for 1 week each year in the summer, we got permission for me to sit on a rocking chair in a local park and read a C.S. Lewis Narnia book over 5 nights to any of the local kids who would come. We put on free refreshments for them, and I would just sit in the chair and read one of the Narnia books to...
English accent helps, I think.
The English accent certainly helped, particularly in America. And for a few years there, after I'd finished each evening section, we would have refreshments, and I'd just hang around and try to get to chat to as many of the adults as I could who'd come. And there was a gay couple who would attend pretty regularly, so I always tried to make sure that I would chat to them during the week at some point. And occasionally they came to church. Now, nothing ultimately, as far as I know, ever came from that connection. But I'm pretty confident that whatever else they thought about me was that they may have thought my views on sexuality and marriage were completely crazy. But they didn't think that I was motivated by bigotry or hatred because they'd met me as a real person, and we'd had pleasant conversations, and I'd invited them to church in a in a context which was not hostile or confrontational at all, where it just arose naturally out of friendly conversations we were having. It's a small example, but I think, if we're going to evangelize people particularly from that kind of group, then we have to have relationships with them. How we build those probably depends on where you live and what opportunities cross your path, whether it's through the workplace or through a housing association or something like that. I think we also need to remember that when we're speaking about people from the LGBTQ community, one of the things that came through very clearly in Rosaria's earlier book, Secret Confessions of an Unlikely Convert, which is the story of her conversion. One of the things, and I'd never really realized this until I read her book, was that she was really plugged into the gay community. It was a real community. These people were in and out of each other's houses. And that made me realize it's very hard for somebody to be converted in that kind of context, humanly speaking. When I was converted, my life didn't change a whole lot. I kept my circle of friends. My life didn't change. If a Muslim converts or a Jew converts, their whole life is turned upside down because they lose everything. Similar thing applies to many of the LGB community. So we have to be an obvious, strong community so that them leaving one community is not leaving them high and dry. There's another community for them to belong to. So I think hospitality is very important in the church's outreach. What was the second half of the question?
How do we do it practically when we feel so overwhelmed with life as it is?
Yeah, I go back to the point I made towards the end of the lecture when I said, the Great Commission is given to the church as a whole. It's not that everybody has to do every task superbly and excellently. And for my wife and I, there are rhythms of life. When our kids were younger, when we were poorer, when we lived in a much smaller house, our capacity for hospitality, it was there, but it was considerably limited compared to what it is now. I think you need to think carefully about your position in life, what is possible for you, and to do what is possible. And as a church, to have an overall strategy as a church whereby, if you like, the burden of hospitality will fall more on some people than on others. Because when you're in your 50s, like I am, and it's just yourself and your wife, and you're rattling around in a home with plenty of space, hospitality is a whole lot easier than if you've got 4 children under the age of 10 and you're running around in circles merely trying to keep up with everyday life. So I think, wise, thoughtful reflection on the possibilities that you have. I think everybody does have opportunities for hospitality. It's just some have more than others. Take those opportunities that you do have. Don't go into a depression. Don't feel that you're not measuring up if you don't have so many opportunities. Different people have different capacities for these things.
That's helpful. I remember a couple I knew who wanted to practice hospitality, but they just weren't good at doing stuff in their home. And so they would take people out to dinner all the time, and that was how they did it. So that worked for them. Jens, do you have anything to add to that?
Okay. Another of Hartmut Rosa's concepts is the acceleration society, and I think time is a problem. We are simply too busy to spend time with people and being hospitable. And I think we need to find ways to slow down, both as a church, but also as individual Christians. I also take great comfort in what you're saying about the Great Commission being given to the church, because my wife and I are very different persons. I find it sometimes challenging to meet people and start a conversation and invite them, but my wife is fantastic at that. But I love cooking. I do all the cooking at home, and I enjoy providing meals for people coming to our house. And
It's a great team between the two of you.
Yeah.
That's great. I appreciate what you said about time. And wouldn't it be wonderful if when people came into Christian community, into churches, they sort of felt like they were entering a different time zone, a different rhythm, where things slow down and we're set to a different sort of order of time. That would be the goal, I would think.
Yeah.
Jens, this is a question for you. You mentioned towards the beginning of your talk that our humanity, including our maleness and femaleness, is a gift. It's a good gift from God. And it seems that that is a real line of cleavage today between the Christian vision of reality and the one in most of the world around us. If the world has no intention and no purpose, if it's simply raw material for us to manipulate, then gratitude doesn't really have a meaning in that context. But for Christians, gratitude is really kind of our fundamental posture in our lives. I wonder if you might press into that a little bit more, and particularly maybe speak to how we can encourage each other in having an attitude of gratitude, not just for our salvation. I think we're clear on that. We could always do more of that, but not just for that, but also for the givenness of our creaturely existence in this world.
Yeah. I think it's extremely crucial, not only for redemption or salvation, but also for the common good and well-being of people, to begin with the givenness or the gift of life. In some ways, I think it resonates with most people's intuition that life is a gift. But again, in our societies, so many people feel the pressure of not performing enough, being good enough, being insufficient. And I think the doctrine of the givenness of life, the gift of life, is a very crucial place to begin conversations with people. And showing them how fantastic it is, how gracious it is that we have our lives as a gift, and not only as a gift, but as Christians we can add that it was given to us by a personal Creator who gave it to us